Knightsville branch. I'm the Knightsville branch librarian of the Cranston Public Library. Last week, Martha introduced this hands-on science series with planting seeds. This week, we're going to learn about a different science concept. We're going to be testing different objects to see whether they sink or float. So you may have seen our Facebook post asking you to have different materials ready if you wanted to follow along, or you can just watch and do it later. So the first thing that we have is a dish pan, a large dish pan or a large bowl. This one is filled with water. We also have aluminum foil and pennies. We have a plastic spoon, a straw, a sponge, and a plastic cup. So Martha used the scientific method, so you may already be familiar with that. One other thing that was in our list was an orange, and we'll get to that later, okay? Because you may be wondering how that fits in, but we'll get to that. Okay, so if you're already familiar with the scientific method, what we do is we ask a question. So we're going to ask whether these objects will sink or float. So what do you think? I'm just going to move this so that you can see. So what do you think? The plastic spoon, will it sink or float? Can you see that? So it's floating. What about the straw? What do you think? That's floating also. What about a penny? What do you think? That sinks. Now, the sponge is interesting because you might think that as it gets wet, that it might float at first, but then as it absorbs the water, maybe it would sink. Let's find out. It's just floating, but even if I try to push it down and get it wet, it still comes back up. So it continues to float. Plastic cup. What do you think? Sink or float? So it floats, but again, if you fill it with water, it will sink. So what we're seeing here is that the objects that are really light, they float, and the ones that are denser will sink to the bottom. Okay. So we also have the next part before we already kind of skipped over that. Sorry. We do some research before our experiment, and we have some books. This book right here is Things That Float and Things That Don't by David A. Adler. And this book is also available on the library eZone, which you can get to from our library webpage. So this is, it's a good story. It's actually nonfiction, but it's told like a story, and it goes over the concept of sinking and floating. Now, the next part is we were testing. So what do you think? Did everything turn out the way that you thought it would? Sometimes, some of them are tricky, but most of the time we can figure out, like I said, based on the density of the object, which ones will sink and which ones will float. So that was, it's called a hypothesis, when you state whether or not you think it's gonna, what you think is gonna happen, and then when you actually test it. And then we have the conclusion. So like we were just talking about, whether or not it turned out the way that we thought it was going to turn out. Which brings us to the orange. Now, here's an orange that's unpeeled. Do you think it will sink or float? Let's find out. So I hope that you can see that it is floating, okay? But if we take that away and peel it, look what happens. It sinks. It's no longer like, well, I can show you the difference. This one was, you could see some of it came back up so that it was floating towards the top, and that one is just sinking towards the bottom. Okay, so the reason for that is the peel or the rind of the orange has a lot of air pockets, and they in between the orange and the peel, and they actually, that's what keeps it floating. So then when you peel it, even though you're taking away some of the mass, which is kind of strange because you're taking something away from it, but it's what you're left with is the orange that is denser. So that's why it sinks. Okay. So now the next thing is, one of the objects that we tried out was the penny, and that sunk right away. So can you think of a way to make it float? Can you think of a way to make a penny float? If you're thinking, maybe put it on something that floats. So like we have our sponge here, and if you put the penny on top of it, now the penny floats. Can you see? I hope you can see that. I hope you could see that. This is my first time doing this, so I'm not sure. Hopefully that this is working, but oh well, we may experience technical difficulties. Okay, so we also have aluminum foil. So aluminum foil, I made kind of like a boat shape, okay? And that floats. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to have our aluminum foil boat and see how many pennies it will hold. Okay? So let's see how strong our boat is. 1, 2, 3, you can count along with me. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. It's getting a little heavy. 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. It's still afloat, but it is getting a little heavy. 33, 34, 35, 36, 37, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, 53, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58, 59. I don't know. It's it's leaning. I think it's going to start to take on water. 60, 61, 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, 70, 71, 72, 73, 74, 75, 76, 77, 78, 79, 80, 81, 82, 83, 84, 85, 86. Oh, let's see if we can get to 100. 87, 88. Oh, nope. It sank. So it held 87, and then on 88, our aluminum foil boat sank. So that was interesting. So there are many things around the house that you can try to see if they'll float. It's really a fun concept. Make sure that you check with an adult before you do this, because I don't want you ruining anything that may be around the house. But I hope you enjoyed this. And next week, Gail will be here with a different hands-on science concept. So thank you and see you soon.